All right, Jess, thank you for being here. I like to open up by just kind of giving you a space to explain some of the things you do, and then we can get into some of how you think. I was introduced to your work on the Way Forward podcast and kind of led me into a little bit of a rabbit hole. And I think what you're doing is important, and your passion for it is pretty evident. So if you can just give people an idea of what what you do, the structure of it, and then we'll go a little deeper.
Thanks. Well, thank you for inviting me to have this discussion with you and your podcast and your audience. I appreciate it. It's great to have these connections throughout all of our space-time continuum. It seems like we're making really great connections with people and good messages going out there, people taking the time to listen to podcasts that have meaning for them. Yeah, I mean, what do? I do a lot of different things. I have a lot going on. I'm the
Mm,
founder of Wildkind Outdoors. My company is really focused on outdoor education, and I'm also launching this month. Actually, the website will be launching a nonprofit called Wildkind Academy, and that will be a rewilding and leadership school for youth and teens, really to
mm,
help prepare our next generation to have more of those earth-based skills and even just building self-reliance, building a sense of autonomy, building a sense of nature connection. So all those things matter to me. I also, of course, through Wildkind Outdoors, work with adults. So that's kind of where I work with adults, and then Wildkind Academy is where I work with youth and teens. For my company, Wildkind Outdoors, I've been doing this work for about 5 years, and everything from, I'd say, traditional skills like basket weaving and fish tanning and just learning how to work with our hands in that
mm,
connectivity with nature and seasonal alignment, all the way through to wilderness survival training, advanced wilderness survival training. I've worked with private groups, public groups, and even recently last month had the opportunity to work with special forces and did an advanced wilderness survival training for that group. And so I've really been blessed to be able to live and work in the outdoors pretty much full time. This is my
mm,
full time gig. I am right now in the mountains of Colorado at 10,000 feet in my travel trailer and working with Starlink, this incredible technology that allows us to be out here and to be able to communicate, and just really wrapping up my season here in Colorado where I
mm,
teach as well. I've been teaching all over the US, really.
mm. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful work, and I so there's two questions to kind of follow up because I'm curious. I mean, I have so much to say on the subject, so I have to take a step back because
Sure.
there's so much there. But um, for people at least interested in kind of getting to understand what you're doing or if they want to approach it, what are some of the first skills and steps that you focus on for these people? And then also, what was this orientation into this world like? Because it's one thing to be interested in it, and it's another thing to kind of reinvent your life and rewild yourself to a degree. Um, can you also, after you answer that question, can you get into like where this shift happened for you that you were just going to take your life into this dimension?
Mm. Okay, I'll kind of start where you just left off.
Sure.
The last the last question. I was a I've always been somebody who has had just kind of deep reverence for nature since I was little. I was raised in Central Oregon, very free range. My dad, I had a horse. My dad was a cowboy. I'd
Mm,
ride off on my horse by myself and spend just ample amount of time by myself, wandering around, exploring. I did a program called Through Outward Bound when I was 14. That was a 3 week hike through the Pacific Crest Trail. And yeah, 3 weeks of just traveling with a crew of youth and setting up our camp every night and learning all sorts of skills, from
Mm-hmm.
belaying down mountainsides to working with an ice pick to stop ourselves from a fall. And so those just that level has always been something that's really been important to me. It
Mm-hmm.
helped change my life when I was 14 and young girl in middle school transitioning to high school, and all of the complexities of being a young person, feeling like the insecurities of being a young person. I can only imagine what they are today, but
Yeah.
back then it was, enough as well. And so when I took that, what I would call kind of a coming of age initiation, of being able to go and take 3 weeks of really like deep backcountry survival training, but also waking up every morning to a sunrise, to going to bed every night under the stars, and that level of connectivity, when I came back at to start my freshman year of high school, I was a different person.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really just didn't have some of the same pitfalls. And I think it's due to having a coming of age, a real leadership training, a real sense of my own empowerment. And that really was meaningful to me. Those are the kind of things that I think are important still today, that even more important, that our young people are getting these initiations and these really almost solo opportunities to go into wild places and
Mm-hmm.
have basic human skills of fire, water, shelter, foraging, food. All the things that we would maybe call wilderness survival today are actually just basic human skills 101. This is
Mm-hmm.
something humans have been doing since the beginning of time. And we have just recently, in these last, in this kind of modern world, disconnected ourselves from the basic human skills.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's so much to be learned from participating in our primal nature in wild places. And so for me, this progression, these things have always been important to me, and I've also had a very deep spiritual connection to our world. I've been in, I'm curious to the mysteries of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And so nature helps me. It's my temple. It's a place I go for worship. It's a place I go for understanding and for learning. And fast forward to being an adult, and falling into the patterns of adulthood, getting married, raising children, needing a job, having to kind of anchor into the matrix, for lack of a
Mm-hmm.
better term. It really, all the constant struggles of keeping up and feeling like I was just stuck at a desk job. I was a marketing director for a large, well, fairly large performing arts center in Olympia, Washington. And COVID happened. And I lost my job because I couldn't market any live performances, or people weren't gathering together. And it was in that time that I think I really was like, I'm a single mom now. I need to figure out how to not feel so vulnerable. I want to feel more self reliant. And for me, that's what started my journey of really learning deeply these skills, earth-based skills, and knowing I didn't have the money to just stockpile or become a prepper. I mean, that wasn't available to me as a single mom with no income.
Mm-hmm.
So I took my marketing background and started to reach out to some of the best instructors I could find, who were teaching all of these nature-based skills, and saying, hey, could you come to Washington? I'll market your class. Let me come take your class and I'll fill it up using marketing. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how Wildkind Outdoors began, was just a clever way to get the training. And here I am 5 years later now as an educator, and have really grown this mission.
Mm. Yeah, it's a beautiful journey, and it seems like, like you said, these are not just survival skills; these are human skills that we had had to be connected to for our entire history. So I think there's something really about reconnecting to just being in nature, and then also just using your hands to keep yourself functional. Or I don't know, it's a connection that I'm seeing that we've lost over, especially since the Industrial Revolution, and people suffering because of this, but not knowing that this is why they're suffering. And I think inherently that spiritual connection you're referring to is why, like a lot of indigenous cultures, felt so connected to just the natural cycle of existence and to feel that spiritual connection. Has your relationship to that spiritual side always been there since you were young, or is this something that is continuing to be developed as you further your further your life into this direction?
I think for as long as I can remember, I mean, even just as a young girl, I've been really attuned to energy. It's just, I mean, I was like probably one of those little kids that was like, I see dead people. Like that. I mean, that's always, I've just, and I say that jokingly, but there's just been, since I was young, I could feel things, I could sense things, I could see things.
Mm,
And I've tried different modalities from I when I was young, I'd go to church and then I'd be like, well, that doesn't make sense, and this doesn't make sense, and that doesn't make sense. And I'm not saying that all religions don't have some sort of thread or truth, but I guess just the organization behind traditional religion was just not something for me. And so thankfully, I had a dad, my cowboy dad, who
mm,
would take me into sit by a river. I mean, from a young age, and be like, this is where we're going to go to listen. And we go to the mountains to feel. And I think
mm,
he was my first real introduction to using my sensory my senses to feel more,
mm,
what I now call aliveness training. I consider myself an aliveness coach. I work with the senses. I work deeply with feelings, our senses, making sure we're not numbing out, that we're feeling more, because through those channels, we're going to be able to receive more information from the world around us and to be able to activate our full humanity through our
mm,
feeling channels, through our sensory channels. And so keeping those open. And if we are just constantly bombarded in our world with the technological side or four walls of enclosure, and we're not giving our senses this opportunity to expand and to open and to receive, this brain of ours, which is this incredible receiver,
mm,
we're limiting our human experience. And so, yeah, for as long as I can remember, this has been, I think my family would say, oh, she's a seeker, for that
mm,
term. But thankfully, being just inquisitive and wanting to understand my world more, that seeker type mentality is, I think, led me to some really profound opportunities to be fully human. Whether it's, I mean, I've worked with plant medicine this last year
mm,
in a way that's really opened me up to new things, and I have all sorts of wonderful teachers throughout my life that I feel have helped open my mind to things, and I've been a human that's chosen a very unique path. My
mm,
whole life, I've chosen a very unique path that's allowed me to get into some pretty deep realms. And I'll give an example of that. When my marriage ended, and I would say I was at my lowest in terms of depression. I lost my job, um, divorce, just this sense of absolute overwhelm, lowest of the lows,
mm,
a sense of like, I can't go on. I'm just completely feeling hopeless. My remedy to that was that I chose to go work at a funeral home and cemetery, because at that point I was like, I just think I'm feeling so not alive myself and so close to death, that what if I went and just worked with the dead and dying every day, what and
mm,
have this reality check of what is truly alive versus not alive, and what are people experiencing who have a terminal illness or are aging, and looking at mortality in a different way. And those 2.5 years that I dedicated my time to to be in death care,
Mm-hmm.
which also led to me doing a death doula training. It led me to taking a hospice training, so that I could really understand all the shadowlands of what it means to have mortality right in front of us. And that mortality training, that mortality awareness, I think was really the opening channel for my gratitude for what it means to truly be alive, regardless of the things that happen to us that are so devastating, because that is
Mm-hmm.
part of life,
Mm-hmm.
is this polarity of absolute joy and bliss and beauty all the way to devastation and trauma and things that overwhelm us with emotion for, but I truly embrace it all. Like, that's what we're here for. This is our choice in humanity at this time, is having that absolute full life experience, and we're in it deep right now. I mean, this
Mm-hmm.
is, I think, because of the internet, we are so hyper aware of all the devastation, and of course through media channels, that is what we're going to get. The filter is going to be like all the stuff that makes us have an emotional reaction, that is the hook,
Mm-hmm.
that we are investing our emotional energy into. And I think we're on a path that's really challenging, because our nervous systems, I don't think, are meant to handle an entire global internet of devastation. Our nervous systems are, before internet, and I'm kind of talking on and on here and
That's good.
bouncing all over the place, but in regards to death, in regards to our sense of purpose and well-being and feeling, depression, and whether we can be hands-on with the tragedies around us. Before internet, we would live in a town, and we would hear of things happening in our local communities, whether it was a fire or a flood, or an illness or something happening to one of our community members, or something happening within our greater community. But it was such an opportunity for people to jump in and be somatic and visceral and help out. Like, okay, a fire just happened, all hands on deck, community goes, and we help, and we do what we can to support one another in this holistic survival way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a sense at the end of the day of, I did something to support my community. And also, if there is a death or something tragic that happens within a community, our ability to go and hold hands with one another, even to have a burial where we are together, like digging in the dirt and crying and talking and sharing stories and connectivity. That's a way we handle and process devastation,
Mm-hmm.
is in communities together. And so, how are we processing mass casualty events, mass internet onslaught of devastation and disaster with no, it's like we're taking it in, and we're not viscerally like
Mm-hmm.
moving it out, and or having a sense of, how do I help? How do I jump in? How do I process this?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm a big advocate at this time about creating community resilience, community connection, and that we really do need to bring it back to hyper local sense of connection. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's really where I think my heart is right now, more than ever, is in the community side um, of connectivity. And I've heard it called holistic survival. And that really sat and resonated with me. And because survival, we're all doing survival every day. We're if you're eating food and drinking water and, you know, living in shelter, and, you have made your basic survival needs met. But above and beyond that, we're also sentient beings who are here for more than just our survival, because we're soul. We're more than our bodies. So lots
Mm-hmm.
lots to digest there.
There's a lot of things there that you said though that interested me, especially one way I didn't really think about it was like with being fed so much bullshit and even like emergencies and negative stuff, and you're being fed this through a device. You can't in your local community actually, do anything to help. And that's it is interesting. I just never really thought of it that way because yes, if I'm responding to an emergency in my immediate life, I'm there to actually put myself there to in a position to help. So even if I'm helpless or even if the situation is devastating, we still have like the ability to respond to what's in front of us. But if we're just being fed some like stuff through our phone or news, it's like
Right.
you have the feeling of outrage or I want to do something, but there's nowhere
Yeah.
for it to go. And so then you're in
Yeah,
chaos,
creating a lot
which
of like dissonance in the body and the nervous system, in even just our sense of place in the world, because it feels so everything is is blown up in a way that we have no control over, no sense of
mm,
connection to. I mean, you mentioned indigenous tribes, in a more like localized, way historically. If there was a death or a birth or a devastation or a hunt coming up, or anything meaningful that was meaningful to the community, to the tribe, there were rituals that would facilitate that. And
mm,
that ritual could be, it could be a evening fire with song and dance and drumming and music and an expression to take that pain, to take the sorrow and move it through the body and channel it out to
mm,
spirit and to within one another, within that community. And then we moved into these kind of, all right, before internet, now we're an agricultural society, and we have these communities, smaller communities, because we're small towns or whatnot. But at least people were coming together. If there was a death in the community, we knew that community member, and we would either go to church or we would go to some gathering to, come together, bury our dead, have a ceremony, cry, have food, have gathering. These things were really important to community. And so
mm,
now here we are in this most kind of isolated time in all of history, where we're not, for the most part, we can get by not even leaving our homes.
mm,
We're, a lot of single people out there, a lot of people without a sense of community. Because of our world of technology and travel, we can live miles and thousands of miles away from our homes, from our people, from our community, from our family, be living in an apartment, on our phone, just completely downloading the trauma of the world. And
mm,
now we sit with it and we're not going anywhere with it. A lot of people work out and like do physical things. And I think that helps. Being physical helps process trauma and grief and all of that. But where's the connectivity? Where are we
mm,
coming together and touching one another, holding hands, um, having a way to channel grief and pain and suffering? And it is creating some mental illness and all sorts of problems. I mean, so it is time to community
mm.
organize. Like, we got to bring this back.
Yeah,
We
I
got
think what you're doing is important, and it's a reintroduction for that world to people. And it's it's been interesting because I kind of told you earlier I follow my curiosity in terms of the podcast a little bit. I've had a couple people with similar interests as you have, like the just something about reconnecting and rewilding. And then I've been watching like more big wave surfers. My brother's a surfer, and they when they go out in other countries, they just cook over fire the way I saw on your website. Like they're cooking meat or fish right over fire that they caught. And I think there's just something so deep in that connection. And I wanted to ask you, with your developing that relationship to death, which if you want to elaborate on that a little bit, I'm curious as to
Yeah.
like how that was, but also how did that tie into hunting? Like, I think yeah, I'm curious about your experiences with that too, and if you're teaching people those types of things as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, so yeah, I mean, I think obviously, like, I really care about our uh group community understanding to be with death in a more conscious way.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that's a part of our aliveness training, because without understanding and looking at the face of mortality, not only do we as individuals tend to just kind of, we're fine with numbing ourselves or saying sometime in the future life's going to get better, or I'll do the things I want to do. And there's a really good book called The Five Wishes of the Dying, something like that. But I remember it was a book I read, and there's just this thread where people who are dying, like really truly have very limited time left, have these, there's a very similar common thread, which is like, I wish I truly would have taken the time I had, that precious time on earth, to do the things that mattered to me most, to say
Mm-hmm.
the things I should have said, to followed my dreams, my passions, the things, I got anchored into a job to just survive and pay bills. And here I am with very little time left. And why didn't I do this? Why didn't I live the life on my terms? And so these are really important things for us to all consider and keep mortality close to us, because I do believe it will help us live just more meaningful lives when we're not just masking death. I
Mm-hmm.
am amazed at how people don't want to talk about it. I mean, like, there are people who do not want to talk about death. They don't want to
Mm-hmm.
talk about their own death. They don't want to talk about planning for their death and how to make that more easeful for their children, for their people. I mean, I've seen horrible things go wrong in the funeral home because mom or dad didn't want to talk about their death,
Mm-hmm.
and then the kids are left to argue through litigation all these things of what to do next with assets, with the parent themselves. Are they being buried in a cemetery? Are they being cremated? And having this turn into this family crisis. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not really fair. We should be talking about this, and having a plan and looking it right in the eye. That, I mean, there's more healthy connection that can be created through these challenging conversations than just stuffing it as not my problem.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one piece. But coming out of working it as closely as I have in that world of death care, and when I say death care, I actually left the funeral industry to discover that there is this whole world of natural burial, green burial, conservation burial, home funeral planning. The funeral industry is an industry.
Mm-hmm.
It's an industry like anything else. There's sales staff, there's sales managers, everything. And I really realized that there's a lot of education that needs to happen for people to understand and bring back their power with end of life for themselves and for their families. So that was kind of my next phase of life. Was I was a board member for the National Home Funeral Alliance, became a speaker for the Green Burial Council, and an advocate for kind of taking back our power for end of life practices, and that we can do it better. Like, there's a better way. A lot of it, what we used to do, the old timers, of being able to bury a loved one on the back 40, there's something to that. Now I understand in our modern world that really becomes complex when we all are property owners. And so having an entire estate of family members who've been buried on 20 acres, and then you decide to move, and then what? So there are some complexities, and there's reasons to have legal cemeteries. But there are ways we can do this with better education around it, so that it's not a salesperson telling you what's what, but that we actually know our rights, the rules and regs around how we die. So that piece lives in my field. How this relates to hunting, fishing. So when I lost my job as a marketing director, even though I grew up very free range and I grew up very much in connection to nature, I didn't have a family that hunted, or I'd never been fishing in my life. I'd never even thought about hunting. For me, you go to the grocery store and there's the food.
Mm-hmm.
You buy the fish, you buy the meat, it's packaged, like, I really didn't have that strong connection truly to food. Now, I was a gardener, and I actually went through a master gardener training
Mhm.
and became a master gardener. I was growing my own food when my kids were young. I had big food production gardens. I was really close to and connected to the land, and and after a harvest, I was preserving the food, canning, freezing, preserving, and always felt that strong connection to food that way. But I did not have a sense of connection to my food from animals, from fish. That was a missing piece.
Mhm.
And so when I began what we could call my rewilding journey of really understanding, I wanted a deeper connection to the land, to my food, because it all is connected. It's like all the same. um, I got the opportunity to go fishing for the first time. And for me, when I went fishing and I had this experience of pulling a fish out of the water, just this beautiful perch out of Lake Cascade in Idaho, then it was go make fish tacos that night. And wow, what a revelation. The fish
Mhm.
I caught turned into dinner that night. And it
Mhm.
just, it opened something in me that was so special, and I became someone who went fishing as much as I possibly could. I got into, I bought all the gear. I got my fishing rods. I got into fly fishing. I just was like, whoa, this is really special.
Mhm.
And it fishing, some people are like, I get bored just sitting there, for hours on end. And it's like, oh my gosh, for me, it was like a meditation to just be
Mhm.
out there on the water, whether it was a lake or river or stream, and just it became a different form of connectivity. And for me, I only fish to eat food. It's not for me. Let's go to this for some kind of any other reason than I fish for food.
Mhm.
And same thing with hunting. I hunt for food, and it's not just hunting. I learned how to process roadkill. I had a wonderful friend who took me roadkill on a roadkill journey one winter where we woke up at 4 in the morning, and this was near Cle Elum in Washington, and we just drove the highways, and or we're close by where there's a lot of deer and elk jumping out into the road. And sure enough, we came upon a elk that had been hit and abandoned. And wow, what an opportunity to say this entire animal provided meat in the freezer for the winter. And that was just a roadkill. And so
Mhm.
it's led to just a greater awareness of where our food comes from. I'm very much a food is love type of human. I am so grateful for food. I am so
Mhm.
grateful for the food we eat together, because that's one of the rituals of community that brings us together. And so learning to have a different relationship with food, from the animal meat to fish, and even shellfish, and has just become a part of the lifestyle of living in greater connection to it all. If I'm going to eat meat, then if anyone eats meat, I really highly recommend the experience of harvesting your own meat. It does require it's a huge learning curve. It requires other humans who are willing to step in and be a mentor.
Mhm.
It requires mentorship. But this is something we're really out of touch with, is where our meat comes from. And I would almost say that once you start hunting and catching your own fish, hunting for your meat, I probably wonder if you might eat even less meat, because you know the work that goes into that experience. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of energy. It's an investment. And if
Mhm.
you're the one shooting that arrow or taking that shot, and you are witnessing the death of that animal because of your actions, there is a whole nother respect level for wasting nothing, and the reverence for that life force, and the gratitude that that life force, that animal's life, is providing food for your family. So that brings us into much more balance with food, with waste, with gratitude. I mean, it's just
Mhm.
like this is the cycle of life, the circle of life that some of us are very much out of touch with.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely feel like, and I get it to a degree. When I was younger and I saw hunting, it just seemed like I understood, of course, that this is what you're eating. I was never too disconnected from that concept of it's evil. But it didn't appeal to me. And then I started realizing that I'm consuming packaged food like you're talking about. Um, it's a I encourage you to, if you're not familiar already with Terence McKenna's concept of the archaic revival. Have you ever heard of that?
I'm familiar with him, but
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know that I can describe it effectively enough, when you're with a lot of the idea of reconnecting and going back into these kind of like practices that the human animal did for so long, it's reminding me of his description of this archaic revival, which of course, again, I don't want to butcher it, so I'll spare you. But um, my next question for you too is, because you used, I think it's on one of the quotes on your website, and just the term rewilding. What did that mean for you? Like, what did it mean when you were like, let me learn to rewild? Or is there a proper definition, or is it something that,
Well,
um,
it's actually kind of a charged word, and it's a word that some people are like eye rolling, and some people are like, this is not the proper use of this term. So I you could think of rewilding like this is actually like a term in forestry where it's letting certain areas naturally like a rehabilitation of land so
mhm,
that there is, where we've come in and had certain controls that we can let a naturescape come back to its kind of natural homeostasis. Although that makes sense to me and how I use this term, because so many of us are out of balance, out of homeostasis, that the term rewilding could be really also appropriately used for us learning to get back to our natural states, our natural rhythms, being in rhythm with the natural world, the seasons, seasonal alignment,
mhm,
um, eating in a way that is back to basics of our holistic health as humans. We're not meant to be eating most of the things our current diet is offering through the food industry,
mhm,
just like the death industry, the food industry. I mean, it is not food as medicine. It's food is killing us.
mhm,
And so rewilding could have a lot of practical applications from the way we eat, from the way we are out of balance with the natural world, where even our mass farming practices are so destructive.
mhm,
And another kind of advocacy why hunting really can put us back in balance with our sense of production and meat consumption. And when you have all these mass farms, whether it's producing corn and on
mhm,
these like horrible, like what it's doing to the soil and our topsoil, and the diversity of plant populations, animal populations. So mass farming, mass animal farming, from chickens and cows, and how these animals are being treated. I mean, it is inhumane.
mhm,
And so when I think of rewilding, it's like there is a there is some kind of rebalance that must happen for us to get back to homeostasis, because we are so out of balance right now,
mhm,
that it is a concerning time in our world. Like this is
mhm,
this is a threshold moment. And so I do believe that humans, we can start with ourselves.
mhm,
It's a big project. How do we even take it on? Well, start with yourself. Start with your own practices of being mindful of consumption, being mindful of where your food's coming from, be mindful of how we are finding the balance of resources. All of this it's an inside job. It's going to begin with us, and
mhm,
then it will grow to hyper local communities coming together to do things better. And that's happening. I mean, I see there are even urban communities coming together to create local gardens, beekeepers,
Mm,
raising chickens, goats, trading, bartering, being able to be more self-reliant that way, even in a hyper local small community style.
mm,
And as that awareness is growing, people understanding that regenerative farming practices need to come back. Um, that we've got a ways to go to tip this scale for our cultural rewilding.
mm,
But if we don't look at these things and take personal responsibility, we're in trouble.
mm. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I can feel like our culture's on the tipping point for, for a number of reasons, but um, just that feeling of like it's going to continue to grow and possibly get worse before it gets better. It's an eerie feeling. So again, that's why I think talking to someone like you who's helping people to reconnect in a healthy way is powerful. And I also think, you mentioned, I'm going backwards a little bit, but there's a couple things you mentioned about just not really following that traditional religious path and being connected through nature. One quote I thought of at that time was Carl Jung, he said, "If our religion is based on salvation, our chief emotion will be fear and trembling, and our um, if our religion is based on wonder, our chief emotion will be gratitude." And I think
That's
that
beautiful.
when you are connected to nature, when you are putting yourself back into that situation, there's so much wonder and so much curiosity and awe because you cannot explain it. So I
Mm,
think it's probably you're indirectly doing that, giving that experience back to other people as well.
yeah,
And you can't, you just can't know it unless you feel it. So unless you're having these types of experiences, you don't know, if you're just living a normal suburban life, that your nervous system can feel different. So
yeah,
so
beautiful.
sorry, are you you know it seemed like, I think when I listened to you on the other podcast on the way forward, it seems like a big starting point that you brought up for people is like learning how to make fire. So I want to, and I know that's basic, but I want to know like those early, so those like early physical skills you're trying to teach people, but also, if you want to even dive into what you feel spiritually while with this experience too.
Well, so I've been teaching aliveness courses for the last 2 years.
Mm,
Um, and I'm actually just starting a year-long cohort for women
mm,
that is a year-long rewilding and leadership cohort. We're going to be meeting monthly by Zoom, but we're also building in 2 live retreats,
mm,
where we're going to be working hands-on with the elements, hands-on in all of this work. And then in the summer retreat of 2026, we'll be really doing some of the hard skills of nature enlivenment, and even building in a solo to that experience, because a lot of even just our aged women need that next that next coming of age, where we also feel the reverence for this, for being women in our midlife,
mm,
and how we're transitioning into the change makers and the wisdom makers, wisdom holders. And I've got a few incredible men on board who are coming online, and we're going to be also offering this for men in 2026, a year-long cohort of the hunter, the gatherer, the change maker, the leadership of what is really a unique time in our world. And we need that community, and we need the skills. And so that's one of my big missions in this year ahead. Um, but let's see here. Back to your question, which was that led me somewhere. Yes, the skills, the
yeah, and like the
elements.
fire and no
Yeah,
stress. Yeah, just
yeah,
a free
yeah.
flow.
So, what I found is that when we work with the elements, the elements are like a physical channel for us to be expressing ourselves in this way, working with our senses and the elements. So, earth element, fire, water, air, and even ether. So that it's all in there, the physical and the spiritual. And so I bring people through the elements because that's just a great, it's like the training manuals built in right through
Mm-hmm.
the elements. And if we start with earth element, there is so much to bringing our feet to the earth, as you know, from grounding practices. I'm sure you've heard of grounding
Mm-hmm.
practices, but there is so much to getting dirt time. And we need that dirt time because within the soil are living organisms. There's intelligence, there's a mycelium network, there's a root network, there's so much happening in our soil. And so there's a lot of analogies on how we can have a relationship with earth, whether it's feet on the ground, just like, gosh, that movie, the Avatar, where
Mm-hmm.
they're like plugging in. It's like plug in, because there is so much there to be in exchange with. We can not only kind of take some of our charge that's in our bodies and nervous systems and release to the earth, who's ready to compost all of that, all the way to the earth intelligence, the spiritual side of what happens as spiritual beings, as energetic beings, when we connect in. And so, ways we can also be working with earth is working with soil and soil health, tilling, with using compost. Being able to compost to make healthy soil, to be able to grow food, to be able to get dirt time, to just simply lying on the ground in gratitude and letting ourselves deeply connect and feel. So, earth element is part of the teachings. Moving into water element, one of the things that our cohort women will be doing on their fall retreat is that I will be taking them to a natural spring. And we have these beautiful glass vessels from a company called Alive Waters. They have a nonprofit called findaspring.org.
Mm-hmm.
And I promote these beautiful businesses and nonprofits because they're sharing all of the springs, all of the natural springs, from spring water to drink to hot springs to soak in, all over the US. And you can go to findaspring.org and type in your state, and it shows you, it's like these living document of where you can go be in connection with water and
Mm-hmm.
water element. Water element is life force itself. It's a living entity of life force. And so we are 70% water within our body, and our planet is 70% water. And having a relationship with water, gratitude for water, going through the process of gathering natural spring water, connects us in a primal way to the elements, and to our bodies and to ourselves and to the health of our waters, where we're keeping that in our frontal, like right into the top of our brain,
Mm-hmm.
that water doesn't just come from a sink, it comes from the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And so to go and gather natural spring water brings us back into that relationship that water was always gathered, and it was work. You go and you gather and you bring back for your family. And so some of these relational experiences that are time in the dirt, time with the water, the gathering of the water, the love of water. So even with Dr. Emoto's work, which you probably are familiar with, that you can pray over water or bless water or have loving intentions with water, and it actually changes the molecular structure.
Mm-hmm.
And so these things are part of where spirit and earth elements are all kind of weaving, and that as humans we can be in the alchemy of discovering what that means for us. There's so much science out there, and there's so many incredible educators out there teaching about these different elements. And so it's a rabbit hole, it's a deep dive, and it's fun, and it's an exploration. But it all comes back to, what does this personally mean to me? I
Mm-hmm.
can take information and research and download it, but there's nothing like just going and gathering water and blessing it and drinking it with intention, and just seeing how that feels and how
Mm-hmm.
that affects my personal body. And then same thing with fire. Fire is about as primal to our humanity as it gets. So when I teach how to make fire using natural materials, like gathering tinder from the land, dirt time, going to the trees, and the trees saying, here on my bark is, in this inner bark is this beautiful, the cedar tree provides so much, so many gifts. um, Fire making materials is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this reciprocity that nature has all these gifts, like everything. It's like, here you go, all the tools you need
Mm-hmm.
to be okay as a human in the world. And fire brings us protection. It cooks our food, it boils our water, it brings us warmth, it brings us community connection. Like, nothing brings people together more than a fire. Where, I
True.
mean, how many times you've been camping or hung out with friends, and if there's a fire, there's a circle around that fire. People are just staring at it. They're not on their phones. They're talking, they're sharing stories, they're singing, the guitar comes out. I mean, that is the gathering space. So fire is an important element. It's also the energy of transformation. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's so much that we can give to the fire. There's so much that we can, that the analogy of the phoenix rising. I mean, the fire is just an element that gives us change and transformation and passion. So yeah, so this is part of the rewilding teaching, not only to how to make fire, and and I've taught so many people fire now, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm always amazed that people know. They say, well, I have a fireplace at home, and I take my newspaper, and I take my matches, and I can, I buy the fat wood at the store, and I know how to do this and layer it up, and I order my cord of wood and it arrives, and that's great. That's still fire element, and it's hands on, and that's better than turning on the heat on a machine,
Mm-hmm.
and forced air heat comes through. So that's a level of connection, but it is kind of like taking it to the next step, when it's like, do you know where tinder might come from what gifts earth brings us, from tinder to working with bow drill and creating fire by friction, and being able to light something up with our own hands. And I have seen men and women jump jump up and down with joy and excitement, because I am amazed at how many people have actually not worked with fire hands on in our modern world. In this society, we've just gotten so convenient oriented. It's like, turn a switch and the fire comes on, flip a switch and the fireplace comes on. And it's like, wow, that. But when we're the ones that are turning that switch, when we're the ones that are creating it with our own hands, there is something so primal there. But I see the joy in the people, just like, literally, I've seen tears. I've seen women come to me and say, my husband always did that stuff, and I never thought I could light a fire. And when
Mm-hmm.
they do, they feel it deeply. Same thing with air element and our power of breath, and all that happens in a full breath cycle, the absolute wonderment of what makes our bodies work, and what
Mm-hmm.
happens in a full breath cycle, and how we hurt ourselves when we're taking the shallow breaths of stress, and all that's held in the breath. um, Through air element, we also have the ability to live. Through air element, we are able to speak truth and open up these channels that keep us stifled. So there's many, many, many lessons held
Mm-hmm.
through the elements and training with the elements, all the
Mm-hmm.
way then, of course, to ether element, and diving into what exists all around us within ether.
Mm. Well, it's so funny that so much of our health comes back to so much of like what we already possess, health and happiness, like all these elements that are already pre-existing. And of course, sometimes like, I take supplements and I want to get into some of the further stuff, but if I don't have the simplicity of the sun and the ground and the water and just the proper breathing, like that is such a foundational a foundational piece. And you said something as well that I really resonate with, which was like you were talking about the science, and I forget how to pronounce his name, Dr. Emoto, I think, his work around the water, and there's a lot of science behind so much of these things, even breath work and even circadian biology and all that shit. But part of it comes back to like so much comes back to what you feel, and it reminds me of a lot of Wim Hof and why I resonate with Wim Hof's teaching, because he did get scientific backing for a lot of what he was saying, even though, of course, there's speculation. But he just was like he's just such a feeling oriented person and such a student of nature, and it was like, this is what I do, and that's the most important part anyway. Like, you can
Yeah.
have all the fucking books and research, but if you don't feel it or resonate with it or actually even do it, then it doesn't make, it doesn't make a difference in your life. So
Yeah, it's true. It's personal alchemy. Like this is the journey of personal alchemy. Okay. Yeah. So let's see. So personal alchemy, you were
okay.
saying about how there is so much science out there. There's so many places we can go with biohacking, with the science of the human
Hmm.
experience for our greatest health and well-being. And you had mentioned Wim Hof and
Hmm.
the, that power of just feeling and the personal exploration of how all this works for our unique bodies. And that's really where I think I have found just the most, I don't know, the greatest form of this expression is just that I realize I'm the alchemist who is here to explore what my biology needs, how I best enliven myself. And that process is, I love this word alchemy because we're all born just rough and raw and with lots of edges. And it's a life journey to kind of to become the gold, to become the that polished, kind of beautiful, glowing version of ourselves. And it is a journey. It's not a course. It's not a book. It's
Hmm.
not someone else's training. It is truly an inside job to say what wakes me up, what makes me feel more alive, what do I need to do? Do I need to get into the sun every day? There's times where, as a woman who's premenopausal and turning 50 next year, I am I'm not cold plunging right now. Like, cold plunging was too overstimulating, and
Hmm.
my nervous system actually needs a lot of nurturing, needs a lot of warmth. I'm like, I need soups and I need hot springs. Like,
Hmm.
I'm not cold plunging right now. I do a lot of resilience training in different ways, but my
Hmm.
body is saying that's not supportive right now. And that's that deep listening.
Hmm.
There's not one recipe for every single person. It's hormonally different. It's male, it's female, it's how we eat, how we are, our sunshine, our movement, our physicality. All of that is something we get to explore and what works uniquely for us.
Hmm. I think that's wise to listen to what makes sense for your body, because if you just read a paper, you're like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do, without listening. Um, how how were you received? I don't know what area you were living, but I know you were working that marketing job, and um, I imagine maybe suburban life. And how are you received? How were you received, and maybe even how are you received now by other just kind of people that don't really, they might not get it. I don't know if they do or not, but like, how are you received is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. So that's an interesting question. When I first started this path, when I lost my job during COVID, it really started with just a blog. And I had a weekly blog, and it was my rewilding journey, and I called it Field Notes from Jess.
Hmm.
And my whole thing was there was so much to learn, like from foraging, wild foraging, herbal medicine making, uh, the utilitarian use of plants, from the basket weaving to hunting and fishing, archery, meditation. I was literally like, where do I begin? And it was such an overwhelming thought because I just was like, I have so much to learn. And so I just decided I was going to take one new thing a week, learn a new skill once a week. I would just dedicate my week to being in training with that one skill. So
Mm.
maybe I wanted to learn about usnea, which grows abundantly all over, but especially in Washington and Oregon. And I was like, I want to learn about usnea because usnea is this medicinal. Um, it, it has these medicinal qualities, and I can make a tincture out of it, and I could even do a tea out of it. And I would spend all week studying usnea, and I would work with it. I'd make a tincture out of it. I'd make medicine with it. I would harvest it. I would explore it. It's like I would be in relationship with that plant. Or I'd like to, this week I'm going to go salmon fishing. And so let me learn about like what are the salmon runs? When is this happening in my area? Tell me more about salmon. Like I wanted to learn everything I could about these different aspects of nature. And so I just write about it.
Mm.
And that commitment that I had to the blog helped me process, integrate, learn more, and share.
Mm.
And that really, I think, is what it was really well received, because it was wholeheartedly an exploration of discovery that was, I think people could tell my authenticity
Mm.
and just truly wanting to learn and to share. And that year, it was a whole year that I didn't miss a week. It was like everything, brand new skill every week, and sharing about it. And it was very well received.
Mm.
And with that, my friends and my family could follow along my journey and also be like, and I gained a whole community of friends thanks to online stuff, thanks to Instagram, thanks to Facebook, thanks to my website, that I could have a channel to share. And
Mm.
with that, people were cheering me on and also inspired to do something maybe similar, to learn something that piqued their interest.
Mm.
Not everyone's into fishing, but some people are really into plants. And so I was so all over the place that there was something for everyone.
Mm.
and, and so I think it was very well received. And I've also had all sorts, ever since I started my Instagram. I'm Wildkind Jess on Instagram,
Mm.
or Wildkind Outdoors is my business on Instagram.
And I'll put you in the show notes, by the way.
Cool.
Just have everything in there. Yeah.
Sure, thank you. But ever
Mm.
since I started Instagram and started kind of growing a network, I've also experienced all the stuff from from energetic daggers coming my way to hate stuff, or all sorts of criticism because of hunting or fishing. I actually just recently had a woman who said she's vegan, and she called me a murderer. And I was like, wow.
Mm.
Like I just, it's like a total glitch to my matrix to be
Mhm.
called a murderer. And I've learned over time. At first I was really sensitive to it, because
Mm.
I'm a very sensitive human, very
Mhm.
sensitive woman. And I was like, I wanted to explain every little thing and try to be like, oh, it's this or that, or maybe look at it this way, or here's why this is important to me. And I would try to like type out and explain all these things. And I've had some years, like I'm a little like, now I'm like edgy, and I can be
Mhm.
like, fuck that. And I now can just be like, block, delete,
Mhm.
because that's not my argument. That's not someone I care to like spend my precious energy trying to explain out or change their mind. And I don't get into political arguments online. I don't get into kind of, when it comes to my values, I know my values, I know myself. And so I'm not here to, have to like explain that away to
Prove it.
people who are not,
Yeah.
who don't resonate with the work I do. And so it's just easy. It's like done, block out.
Mhm.
And I don't waste my energy.
Smart, smart. Because online too, you don't even know who's talking to you, and it is difficult. People say things, and you're like, is this really like what you think? But again, you can engage with that if it's in real life. But
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that a lot of people were inspired, and like you were mostly well received. Like
Yeah.
I think it's good. It's a good sign. People have their perceptions. And again, I'm from, and where I'm at right now is on this in the Northeast in a suburban high density area. So sometimes I think people have a tendency to think things are weird. And then moving to the West, there's a lot more openness I've
Yeah.
discovered, and a lot more connection because there's open space and deeper nature connection. And I guess my probably my final question would be, um, what what would you like to leave people with, or what are some of the deeper lessons that you've been learning over the past few years, whether that be from your work or from your plant medicine experiences or from just life itself and becoming, growing into
Yeah.
a different time?
Yeah, thanks for asking me that. That's a question that runs like deep right now for me as someone who is an educator and who is a community organizer. So I feel very blessed to be alive at this time in our world. I'm not someone who wishes they lived 100 years ago, 200 years ago. I love our modern world. I love that we have this ability to podcast and
Mm-hmm.
have connections all over the world because of the internet and because of our modern ways. Are we out of balance? Yes. Are we seeing signs of disease? Yes. And so in this year ahead, I feel very strongly that this is not the year 2025 moving into 2026. This is not the time to be complacent. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't the time to be lazy. This isn't the time to cruise control. Um, I think because of all that we are seeing from civil unrest to kind of a global concern for our world, even down to natural events. And I think it's very clear that our systems are vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think anyone could be like, oh yeah, is this zombie apocalypse time? Is that now? Like, are we in zombie apocalypse now? And even though I am not someone who's fear based, that's not even my operating system. I feel like it would be very, very wise for us to start again, inside job. This is time for deep self care. And the reason we need like full on deep self care is we have to be able to have the strength, the energy, and the ability to navigate a rapidly changing world. And we need to do that with our head on our shoulders, not in escape mode, not in feeling just so much dread and despair that we are not able to support ourselves, our family, and our community. We are needed. We're here
Mm-hmm.
for a reason. And so activate yourself to wake up, to be your most alive self, eat good food, drink natural water, get that sunshine, get movement, and feel ways that you can diffuse your nervous system into wholeness so that you are your most strong self. Empower your voice. Be this is where we start. And
Mm-hmm.
then from that, with that strength, with that energy, it is also time to activate our holistic survival. So start building networks, start being in community, know your neighbors, lend a helping hand, give. Like that's a great way to get over depression
Mm-hmm.
is to give to others. That's a great way to overcome anxiety is go show up and help someone who is in need, help an organization, help a community, do things to give back. And that's quickly a way that you're going to start to feel better. But we are needing to activate as a society, as a culture. Um, we need to be in better relationship with our earth. We are a collective. We are not state by country by country. We are a whole unit,
Mm-hmm.
and everything happening all over is impacting all of us. And so, in this time of this great divided country and war, of all that's existing here on our organism called Earth, like the more we can be, thankfully plant medicine or just meditation or fingers in the earth, listening,
Hmm.
listening to the waters, feeling the earth, being a shaman in your own world. It's like activate these things because we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We are all connected. No one's getting out of here, without understanding this deep connectivity we all have. But this isn't that time. This we're not living the 80s anymore where we're like yacht rocking and like martinis and yacht rock. Like this is
Hmm.
not that time. We're here for a reason, and we're here in this tumultuous way
Hmm.
to use all of the knowledge, to use all of these resources for our greatest enlivenment and evolution. And because this is a time of evolution, and I'm happy to be here. I'm
Hmm.
in for all of it. Glad you're here. Glad
Thank you.
all these
Thank you.
people who are asking big questions and doing the great work. This is the time of the great work.
Mm. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the wisdom and the words, and I couldn't agree more. I think it's going to continue. I'm happy to be here for it, but I think, like you said, to activate makes a lot of sense right now. And so, thank you for the work you do, and I'm sure we could have covered even so much more, but maybe in the future. So I,
Yeah.
but thank you for your time. Seriously, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you,
Um,
Dylan. And thanks for being an amplifier.
of
That's,
course.
having a podcast, that investment of time that you do. It is an investment of your life force, but you are a connector and an
Mm,
amplifier. And so thank you for your work. We all have our unique ways that we're giving and supporting this movement of
mm,
awareness, awakeness, aliveness. Thank you.
thank you.